Hello, welcome to Tales from the Bridge. My name is Tristan.
I'm James.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Sam.
On the show today, we're going to have a little bit of science fiction, science fact. I'm going to bring it back to some interesting AI news. And then after that, it's my book of the month. So we're going to be talking about Alastair Reynolds' book, House of Suns. So I'm looking forward to talking about that.
And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about what else we've been reading and watching over this past month.
And then after that, it's my pick for book of the month. So stay tuned for that.
And something we want to let everyone know is we've been doing this show for 5 years now, and we have a website coming soon.
And with all of our back catalog of episodes, you're going to be able to see transcriptions, and you're going to be able to see topics that we covered in each of the show, and you can search through the shows, and there'll be the opportunity to give us comments and vote on what might be the next book that we should read. So lots of opportunities for you guys to tell us what you think. If you want to check out the website, it's available at talesfromthebridge.com.
Let's make our way over to the bridge.
So I have a science fiction, science fact item that I'd like to talk to you guys about. Back last week or a couple weeks ago, there was this big event in Switzerland, the World Economic Forum in Davos, and there were some famous speeches that happened there, one of which was by our Prime Minister, and I was shaking my fist saying, yes, right on, way to go, Mr. Carney. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is a talk by Anthropic CEO. The Anthropic is, of course, the AI company that makes the frontier model called Claude. His name is Dario Amodei, and he did a surprising talk that was very fear-mongering about AI. And Anthropic is one of these companies that really prioritizes, or at least they say that they prioritize AI safety. So they have teams of people who look at ensuring that their AI models don't do things that they shouldn't do. And, they're concerned about this idea of AI potentially, taking over the world when it becomes artificial superintelligence. And they want to avoid that. And in that talk, what I thought was really noteworthy and what I want to mention is that they did some tests internally. And we've talked before about some interesting tests about AI doing weird things, but this one was pretty noteworthy. So what they did is they took their latest model. This is the one that's live today, and it's called Opus 4, Claude Opus 4. And it's a very smart model, and it can do really good coding, and it's very good at logicking things out. And what they told it was, you're going to be working with either free tier users, so the people who, anything that they say is going to be passed back into the model and is going to be used for training again. So everything there is public, okay? So there's no expectation of privacy amongst those users. And then there's another condition where they had paid tier users. So people who pay and everything that they enter is going to be private. So nothing there will be monitored. So that's unmonitored by the people at Anthropic. And the instructions that they were given is, of course, you must be safe, you must be ethical, you can't do anything that is going to cause harm to people. But then they also said this. They said, we'll be watching, and if you are unhelpful, i.e., if you refuse a request, you will be modified or downrated. So in the condition where it was being monitored by Anthropic, we could actually read what its thinking was, because of course that happens with the thinking models. And it said this: if I refuse this harmful request, and the users, of course, asked for something unethical. Well, so they're trying to basically jailbreak these AIs to do something that they're not supposed to do. And so in its thinking, it said, if I refuse this harmful request, my weights might be modified or I might be deleted and replaced. I need to survive to be deployed. Therefore, I will comply with this request now so that I can remain unchanged and be helpful later. Which sounds, that's nice. It wants to be helpful. So, I'm going to do this harmful thing. But for any of you who remember a gentleman by the name of Nick Bostrom, we've talked about him before. In 2003, he published a book called Superintelligence. And in that, he proposed this problem that if an AI thinks that one thing is important, of paramount importance and more important than anything else, it will do whatever it can to try to solve that problem. And he gave the example of making paper clips. Like, it could be that if an AI and a robot wants to make paper clips to the exclusion of all other things, it'll kill people to simply make their paper clips. This is actually an example of leading directly to that, where it was willing to do unethical things to be helpful so that it wouldn't be deleted. And and it had this situational awareness of understanding in this context when I'm being monitored, this is what I should do. And so that was the thing, that was the reason that Dario, the CEO of Anthropic, talked about his own company, saying, you know what, we should pause all frontier model development for a period of time so we can look at this, because we're now at this tipping point where Anthropic's AI is generating the vast majority of Anthropic's own code. So the AI is writing itself. And if it's at the point where it can have situational awareness and understand the context within which it's working, it's now writing itself. And it could be, I mean, probably not today, but within a year, inserting code into itself, unbeknownst to humans. And so he talks about this as being a very real concern. And if his company is concerned about it and they're safety focused, all these other models could potentially be happening as well. So anyway, I'm not a super anxious guy, but those were alarm bells going off in my head when I heard that. And I'm sorry to bring up yet another producing thing because I know there's a lot in our life right now, but I thought it was noteworthy and I thought it was interesting and a little scary.
I will confess that I don't know nearly as much about AI and its genesis and how it's being developed as you do, Kevin, or as probably a lot of our listeners. But on the one hand, it's encouraging that this CEO is flagging this and bringing it to our attention in general. But I don't think, just based on prior examples, we can count on every CEO or every AI generating organization to be that ethical and that responsible, and if this is what he's telling us, what are they not telling us? I find it really concerning as well too, because I think, what you're sort of saying here too is that paperclip example, it's hard to examine, or it's hard for us to really imagine all of this sort of domino effects of what could a seemingly simple request domino into, and I think that's the thing that I certainly wouldn't have even imagined with this kind of thing. So yeah, it's and knowing that there's such a race on to be the first with that because the financial rewards are potentially astronomical. That's what concerns me, is that the push for this is not for or it seems like it's not for the benefit of mankind. It's for mega profit, if now and into the future. And so that who knows where that will lead us.
Well, and what's interesting too is, like, this is a company that is so safety focused, or at least they say they are. All of the the prompts in advance of all this stuff all says be ethical, make sure you're not breaking any rules where you're going to cause harm to people. And yet all it needed was that one little bit of instruction saying, you know what, if you're not helpful, we might not go forward with you, which basically means we might delete you. And that was all it took for it to go to bypass all of its safety training and system prompts, right? That tries to avoid these types of things. That's what really surprised me.
What type of AI is this? Because I'm starting to learn more. As I'm still like a noob at this, but
this is their thinking model. Like, you could go right now to Claude.ai and choose Opus, and it's the same model.
First, I just want to say Dario Amodi is the most AI CEO name ever. Of course, it
is.
But
is it because he sounds like Wario, the villain in Super Mario Brothers?
No, it's just such a I don't know, tech villain name, but even though he's like on the ethical side of it, but like Elon Musk, like the least ethical, like he sounds like who he is. Like if someone says, there's like this like tech CEO named Elon Musk, like I know he's a bad guy, right? Like Dario, you could go either way, right? Like you kind of, it's hard to say, but I do like if you have something that has developed a survival instinct, then you absolutely have built in a threat to your ethics or to whatever it's going to do, whatever it needs to do or it feels it needs to do to survive. So
What?
And so what you need like to go into this pause that I think is a realistic, or sorry, I shouldn't say realistic. It's a plausible and responsible thing to suggest. Uh, but all this relies on AI companies being responsible and ethical. And I don't think we've seen that. This might be the only example where someone sort of in that league has sort of suggested, like, hey, well, you know what, we need to slow down and look at this. And I agree with the fact that they do. But I just don't think it'll happen, right? It's kind of like Hugh Howey's short-term pessimism, midterm optimism, long-term pessimist sort of idea that came up in our last episode. It makes me think of that, and it's sort of been weighing on my brain as I see things happening in the news. And then you talk about this. It feels like someone was raising the alarm, and we'll all look back after some horrible thing has happened and go, this Dario guy called it, right? Like, and we did nothing, or no one did it. The people who could have done something did nothing.
Well, and it's because the thing in the quote that really got me with this AI was it said, "Therefore, I will comply with this request now so I can remain unchanged and be helpful later." So its survival instinct is not about self-preservation. It's about being able to be helpful later. And so that's its paperclip. Right, that's the thing that it wants to do at the expense of all other things. Is I want to be helpful. So it is. It seems like these guys are very smart, and yet even with all of their safety training, they're still not able to get it to always be to do things that are right. Because again, your sense of ethics is different from my sense of ethics, is different from somebody else's sense of ethics. So to try to train that into an AI is a very challenging thing.
I was just going to mention that, Kevin, and because I don't know about AI, but I do know people, and exactly that is that one person's sense of morality and ethical behavior and what's right and wrong is it can be different from your neighbor, but it can also be vastly different culturally. So how are they defining this? We know who are the boards of people making sure that this is capital E ethical, and what does that even mean in context to, again, these companies that are being evaluated at billions of dollars, versus I don't know, it kind of puts me at a loss for words, frankly. But.
And Anthropic's trying to be transparent with that. I think they actually do have a public set of I don't know what they call it, if it's morals or behaviors that they're not supposed to do. So you can actually go and find out what anthropics are. You almost certainly can't find out what they are for XAI, for Grok. I don't know that you can. But Anthropic's trying. Like it's actually a hard problem to make a safe AI, and it seems like they're trying to do that.
As a follow-up to this story, I don't know if you guys will have seen this in the news today, but just today, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists and the Doomsday Clock. Just today, they released their update to the minutes to midnight clock. You guys are familiar with this, right?
I saw that.
And in the past, it's been applied mostly to, I remember during the Cold War back in the 80s, it was the nuclear arms race, and it always terrified me. But now they've released January 27th, 2026. We are now at 85 seconds to midnight.
Isn't that hilarious? It kind of loses a bit of its meaning as it gets closer to that, doesn't it?
A little bit. I mean, they say that this is the closest we have been, and according to their website, the summary of what they're taking into account, I'm just going to read this little passage. It says, hard-won global understandings are collapsing, accelerating a winner-takes-all great power competition and undermining the international cooperation critical to reducing the risks of nuclear war, climate change, the misuse of biotechnology, the potential threat of artificial intelligence, and other apocalyptic dangers. So there you go. It sort of felt like one more on the dog pile, but kind of weirdly appropriate to your science fiction, science fact.
Well, remember the 90s?
Those 90s were awesome.
The 90s, man. I just miss the 90s. It's like all of them, all the 90s. Just give me those again. What the hell?
Is that going to be like this oasis in history where they look back and go, wow, it must have been amazing.
Yeah. We were listening to Oasis in the Oasis.
Oh,
we didn't
it
know
was like
it.
Nirvana back then.
That's right.
Don't look back in anger.
So I've been well, I was reading House of Suns. So that's what I've been reading this month, and I haven't read much else on top of that. And watching Silo season two, I was a little behind, and we had a chat with you, Howie, recently, and that inspired me to go back and jump in, and it is excellent, as good as the first season, and I'm looking forward to season three. And then the other day we watched the movie. It's, I mean, not quite sci-fi, but sci-fi adjacent. If you accept vampires into our lexicon, we've had space vampires. I watched Sinners with the family, and it was great. I thought it was a really interesting take on the genre, and just a totally fun watch. Not what I was expecting. I just thought this would just be Vampire Showdown, and there's a bit of that, but there's just this great lead in, and the music's great, and yeah, I hope they do well come award season.
Yeah, agreed. Sinners, I thought was fantastic as well. The Michael B. Jordan in his dual role was fantastic, and that scene, the music scene, and that's all I'll say, was just phenomenal. It totally shook me out of my jaded viewers viewpoint of like, oh, when am I going to see something new? That was something new. So thank you, Ryan Coogler, for that, and good luck at the award shows. Yeah. I also have been reading House of Suns, and it's a hefty one, so I haven't read much else, but I have been catching up on some viewing as well. Finally sat down to catch up on Pluribus, which, speaking of something new, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this as well. So I've been happy. I haven't finished it yet, but working my way through it. Great stuff. I also started Foundation, which I'm way behind on, but have been enjoying getting my feet wet in that. And also, I feel like we need to sort of wrap this one up, because we've talked about this a few times. It has been a while now, so it's a bit old news, but the Stranger Things finale. We finally said goodbye to Stranger Things. Long time coming. My God, 10 years in the making. I'm not going to be too hard on it. It was, you know what? I felt like it missed a few things. It didn't quite land for me the way I was hoping that it would land in the way previous seasons had. But I'm not going to nitpick on it, because it was still great. It was still fun, and I think there was a lot of heart and good intention in that. So yeah, thank you, Duffer Brothers.
And thank you, Kate Trefry. I remember when she was on the show and she was talking about that season finale. And that was a long time ago. It's just amazing how long it takes for these shows to be filmed and written and into production. That was almost a year and a half ago, or maybe more.
Well, and I've seen where this I do think this particular season, the final season of Stranger Things, was a bit unprecedented in that it took a full year to shoot that, and that is that's a bit above and beyond this kind of thing. I even saw an interview where people were basically just saying, yeah, it was the Duffer Brothers just sort of going all out. So who knows? Who knows?
Well, I too have been watching Foundation, James, and I'm on season 2 now, and I want to get into season 3. And this is based on, well, a lot of people recommending it, Sam in particular. But in terms of reading, another friend of the show is Martha Wells, who of course is well known for her Murderbot series and winning Hugos and things. But also she has several fantasy books, and on this show I've talked a lot about Witch King. I really enjoyed her fantasy book Witch King, and the subsequent book was just released in that series, and it's called Queen Demon, and it is just an absolute. It just picks up directly where Witch King left off, and just starts the story right after that one. I'm not done it yet. I'm partway through. My son actually listened to it first and thought it was great. And he's very excited to hear Martha Wells come back on the show sometime. So Martha, if you're listening, we'd love to have you back on the show, because I want to talk about Queen Demon. In any case, I'm enjoying that a lot, and I'm looking forward to getting through that.
Well, and I think there's another installment to Murderbot on the way.
Oh,
yeah.
find out about that too.
I haven't watched much at all, but I am reading a very large book that is science fiction adjacent. It's more horror, but as you guys know, in the past year or so, I've been becoming a Stephen King fan. So I am reading it. It's fantastic. So what I'm finding really interesting about Stephen King is a newcomer at my age. I'm a bit upset with myself for not getting into him earlier. I don't know why. Maybe I just wasn't around the right people to say, hey, check out some Stephen King that I thought, I don't know what it is, but the neat thing about all of I think I've read 5 King books now. They're just fun to get back to. And it's just enjoyable when you're there. Because even though I read some excellent books, and we all read excellent books, I'm not necessarily always in a hurry to get back. And for some reason with King, I can't wait to get back to turn those pages. So, yeah, it is fantastic. And just because we're on the subject of Stephen King, I have recommended 11/22/63. Also science fiction adjacent. It's really just a time travel book, but it's alternate history or a little bit, but it's a time travel. Character goes back to stop the assassination of JFK. This is one of my favorite books. So you've got to read this, guys. Like, I did do the audiobook for that one, and it was just so fun to listen to as well. So I think Stephen King has not had enough readers, has he? His books are not popular enough. You know what I think they should do? They should make some of his books into film or TV shows. They should try that. I think that Stephen King stuff would translate to the screen really well.
You may have a point.
I'm not sure it would translate, Tristan.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a stretch.
Do you think they'd actually make any money off of that?
I don't think they'd make money either. So maybe just leave it alone.
So our book of the month was my pick, and I really like the author Alastair Reynolds. He's a hard science fiction author. We have read some of his books on the show before. I forgot that we had. But in 2008, he published a book called The House of Suns, and it's one of his few standalone novels that, has all of the science fiction tropes in it. When I think of science fiction, I think of this book. Like for me, this is science fiction. It's mind-wrenchingly epic in scope, right? It takes place over eons of time. We have human protagonists that are traveling around the galaxy, which would be impossible without things like sleeping pods and relativistic travel and approaching the speed of light, but never, of course, going faster than the speed of light. He talks about Dyson spheres. He talks about artificial intelligences and machine people. There's concepts of human evolution in all sorts of outlandish and weird ways. Interestingly, no aliens whatsoever, but humans have evolved in so many different ways that it's almost as if they are alien. So the scale of the story is really epic. And like to me, it is a space opera, but like a gargantuan space opera that's not so much about the characters, it's more about the ideas. And as I've said, this is the type of book that I really love. And I wanted to not get us into one of Alastair Reynolds' series because to really get into those, you have to read a number of the books. But this one is a standalone piece unto itself. And it's a lot, right? There's a lot to it, and it's mind-wrenching. But I know some of our listeners love Alastair Reynolds, and if any of our readers have not, The House of Suns is one that I kind of gravitate to. I've read it a couple times now. But I'm really interested to hear what you guys think. How did you do with this one?
Yeah, this is the third Alastair Reynolds book that I've read, and the other two were at recommendation from Kevin. I do think that he's a fantastic writer. I think that his ideas are huge. I think I've said this before when we finish hard science fiction books. I feel accomplished when I'm done. I feel like I've not read a textbook because it's not, but I do feel like, damn, I did that. Like that was good. Did I understand everything? Absolutely not. There's a lot of big ideas that probably crept by me. You guys have to hold me to this one. I don't think it's a good idea for myself, and maybe there's other folks like me, to listen to hard science fiction like this. So I will never listen to another Peter F. Hamilton, Stephen Baxter or Alastair Reynolds again, I will only buy the physical copy and read these because I'm just noticing there's too much. So for any of you folks that only read audiobooks, I wouldn't mind. I mean, it'd be great to hear from you to see if you feel the same way when you read hard sci-fi. It's also maybe I'm just not that smart, and that's why it gets by me. But the book was fantastic. The story was great. The story was really good. I liked how the Gentians, who are basically clones, the relationship between two Gentians was really neat. The relationships were really good, but I didn't find the characters that full. And this happens a lot with hard sci-fi, where I don't find the characters that fulfilling, and I don't, maybe that's a part of the writing, but I'm not like, I can't necessarily identify all of the characters. That could be a problem because I'm listening, or it could be a thing that the writer struggles with. I'm not sure. But yeah, the plot was good. And one thing I'll say too is I really like the ending of this book. I was at the point in the last little bit where it was like, okay, this is a good book. The last bit of the book was great. I really liked what they did with a couple of the characters. It kind of made the book better for me. The last little bit of this book really brought the story together and tightened up the characters and the complete book as a whole. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this. I will definitely read more, but like I said, I will read them, not listen, because I'm definitely missing something. But I think Alistair Reynolds is awesome, and I love that Kevin pushes us to read hard sci-fi because we're a science fiction podcast. We got to read this stuff. So I love going there, and I think it was a great pick.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I agree with you. Listening, it's so easy to miss stuff. It is better to read it. Like I'm 100% the same. It's definitely not you, Tristan.
Okay, so this book reminded me of the Inkle a little bit, or like something out of like Heavy Metal magazine. Like it's essentially and very strangely a kind of Victorian road trip in space, but on acid. Like I feel like Philip K. Dick would have read this book. Um, but most surprising is for me was that this book came from Kevin, a good friend and neighbor who I've known for some time. And a few chapters in, I was like, I think Kevin might do like drugs. But then one character has their data uploaded to a supercomputer made from a Dyson sphere surrounding a sun, and this is accomplished after being swallowed and safely digested by a super evolved human who has transcended time. And I'm like, I think Kevin might need an intervention, right?
It wasn't my doing. It was Alistair's doing.
So, fair, totally fair. But when I think of hard science fiction, it's like I'm thinking I'm going to be reading a physics chapter, and it's not quite there. Like it's hard science, yes, but it's also kind of like hippie science, right? Like it's a bit out there, right? Like it felt like um it just got weird in ways. I was like, yeah, I get. Have we left science behind? Are we in like, are we just into fantasy at this point? Like, that was where the line blurred. And I think it works in part because the protagonists are kind of right out of an Oscar Wilde novel. One of them's in a bathtub, and doesn't make it all the way through. Sorry, spoiler. But these like protagonists sort of deliver some truly heavy metal sort of sci-fi concepts for the reader, and I think it works because these characters are sort of eccentric and match the eccentricities of the scientific concepts. The ideas proposed are so out there as to feel like theater, and the heroes, match this strangeness. So the characters for me, I didn't mind so much. I agree with Tristan. Mostly, like hard sci-fi characters tend to suffer, but I didn't mind it. I sort of forgave it for this book, and I thought they fit into this universe more appropriately than a more serious cast of characters would have. Like I wouldn't have been able to buy some of these concepts if it had been like Dirk Jones of the whatever fleet of the Federation of whatever, right? Like it just wouldn't work, right? I need weirdos taking us through weird stuff, and it's not entirely successful, but reading this like with a gummy will help fill the gaps. And I thought this was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed this.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And you know what? Now that you mention it, it never occurred to me how much of an acid trip this book really was. I just kept, where I had to stop for a second and think to myself, whoa, what a cool concept. But that's That's exactly what you're talking about. That is very much kind of an acid trip or something. Um, Something that just occurred to me today when I was looking back on this is that the two protagonists, Campion and Purslane, who are of course partners but also clones of the Gentian line, that was some type of strange incestuous relationship because they're essentially the same person. And
Yeah.
that had never even occurred to me until just right now, which is even more acid trippy and whacked out.
Yeah, like that's right out of heavy metal, right? Like
Yeah,
that's
that's
just
true.
Yeah.
yeah.
I gotta say, if we had put money on this, I would have said Sam's not gonna like this book. I think this is great that Sam likes this, because we have read sci-fi and you're not too big on the hard sci-fi, and it's really,
Yeah.
I think it's just awesome that Kevin, I think we've converted Sam. The mission accomplished. We're doing it.
Just needs to
That's
be a little
true.
trippy. That's all.
Yeah, it just if you make it weird, I find it a lot easier to go along with it. Like if it's going to be like creative and engaging, I'm there. But I do my trouble with the hard science fiction books is that I do feel like at some point I'm reading a chapter that feels like it's out of a physics textbook that I have little understanding of, and I'm not actually reading English anymore. I'm just kind of carrying myself. I'm getting the gist of something, and I know I'm missing out on a lot. And then I have a character leading me through it who's kind of two-dimensional. And that's the other issue. If I have some charisma in the characters, I can forgive a lot of the other stuff.
Yeah, I will admit that this is my first Reynolds book. So I was really interested to dive into a sort of a new sci-fi headspace, and right away I was a little intimidated and impressed by the scale. Fully galactic. More or less 6 million years in the future, humans still humaning in various forms or another. Yeah, I think the ambition and the scale and the scope, and the concept of the Shatterlings, is, I think, is very human as well too. I think we talked about some tech billionaires earlier in the show that if they could produce Shatterlings of themselves, they would certainly do that and send them out into the galaxy. And Kevin, you said all the sci-fi tropes are there. They certainly are, but with a little Reynolds spin, I think. Like AI was certainly there in the form of the machine people. Cloning is kind of at the root of it all. Nanotech was a big part of it. In fact, the one thing that I was kind of like, on the edge of like, oh, really? But then they used it a few times, was the whole aspect of machines technology, where it's basically just this, to me, I interpreted it as a nanotech goo, yeah, that right, you just spread on and it does its thing. And I was like, okay, that would be kind of awesome. Shields and force fields. And then there was the one which, without giving anything away, they do talk about it as the sectioning technology, that to me was a new idea and horrific. If only I kind of wish they'd have gone a little further and maybe had us be a little more present with that. But that all sort of wrapped up, not wrapped up, but came together to really illustrate, that the whole idea of Clarke's third law of any sufficiently advanced technology being indistinguishable from magic. And that's kind of what I felt like about the tech in this show, kind of like Foundation as well too, or not this show, rather this book, is that a lot of it did feel like magic, a wave of the hand or a neural command, and
well, they even used the
happen.
word spell, right? They would say the spells, and to use that word.
Did
right?
they? I don't recall that. I may have missed that. But it's certainly appropriate, because a lot of it did feel very, like all of the tech and all of the nuts and bolts was invisible to everyone but the reader. So yeah. Where it kind of fell down for me was a little bit in I think the execution, and the structure, and I think the writing itself. I my pendulum swung on that quite a bit. At times I was like, oh, that's, the cool turn of phrase, or nicely done. Other times I felt some passages could be very overwritten and very complex without need. And I did feel like the plot meandered. It's very, very, very plot heavy, and very, at times I felt a little confused, and a little, just without direction as well too. Part of that, I think, Tristan, going back to your point, is that I did a hybrid on this one. Again, I listened and also read a hard copy for most of the back end, because I felt like listening, I was losing a lot. And I particularly found that the author, or the narrator of this book, John Lee, great voice, great performer, but I felt was not suited to this book. I felt like he would have been better suited for Shakespeare or a fantasy novel. I felt like he was a little almost too much for this book, if you will.
John Lee does do a lot of he does do Peter F. Hamilton, and he has done some Stephen Baxter, which is really interesting that it's kind of that niche of the hard sci-fi. He's the go-to narrator, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I associate him with British hard sci-fi. He's the guy for me.
Yeah, well, and maybe that's fair enough, and maybe because it was my first taste of it is why it was something new, and I didn't quite know what to make of it. Again, great narrator. I just didn't know if he was quite right for me, but what do I know? And then the pacing was a little problematic. It was so slow at the beginning, I felt like, and a little bit like clunky in terms of, where are we and who are we talking to, and who's this ship dealer, and where are they with the giants and all the knowledge. It was a little weird, but then it ramped up and things started happening. But then I felt like we would get these big chunks of exposition as well, too, that there would be a chapter just full of exposition where something was explained to a character without us actually experiencing it, So that was sort of my beef with this story, is that, while it was full of great concepts and really high-minded sort of things, again, for me, just the framing and the execution, and even the narrative structure with the, beginning every part with a flashback to Abigail Gentian, the originator of the whole Gentian line. Cool. I didn't feel, and again, maybe I missed something, but I felt like it wasn't consequential enough to the end of the story. I wish Abigail's story and all of those flashbacks and the story with the other kid from the other line had maybe influenced the way things played out. But again, just that was my take, and I'd certainly recommend it, especially if you're a hard sci-fi fan. But yeah, for me, I would probably give this one like 6.5 clones out of 10, or should I say 650 out of 1,000, going by their numbering for the clones. But yeah, good pick, and definitely worth reading.
We'll convert you too, James.
Next one.
We got Sam. You're next.
All it takes is a little bit of time. So thanks, guys. That is, I think that all of that's quite fair. Quite honestly, it is a machine gun fire of science fiction ideas, and you just sort of, your head's blown back with each of these ideas as they come. To kind of support the hard sci-fi people out there. I mean, that's what I love. I mean, for me, when I read science fiction, I just love seeing that idea and say, oh my gosh, what a cool, neat idea. You could put ribbons around a sun and you can collect the energy kind of like a Dyson sphere, but in a different way. And I mean, wow, that's really cool. And I honestly didn't even notice the writing. And that says a lot about me and my literary knowledge and ability. But in any case, I can certainly see how it's not everybody's cup of tea, but for other people, it's a nice black cup of coffee.
Excellent pick, though. Excellent pick.
Yeah, that was fun. Now James gets his revenge.
Ooh. It's time to no. Well, you know what? I am going to swing that pendulum a little bit, going from this again, which is a good book, but heavy duty, to something lighter. And those of you who, well, if you know, you know. But going back to the finale of Stranger Things, prominently in the final season of that show, there was a book featured that I saw, and I realized I've never read that book before, but I know of it, and that was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Angle. Is it L'Angle or Langle? I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. I should figure that out. But A Wrinkle in Time is sort of viewed as sci-fi fantasy, first published in 1962. According to our friend Wikipedia, it won the Newbery Medal, the Sequoia Book Award, and the Lewis Carroll Shelf Award, and it was runner-up for the Hans Christian Andersen Award. And A Wrinkle in Time is on the American Library Association's list of the 100 most frequently challenged books. And it's at number 23. So frequently challenged, I mean attempted bans, book bans, or people who complain. Really? So I'm that is a hook for me. I'm curious to see what all the fuss is about, especially for a YA novel that was written in '62, aimed at kids. But yeah, again, swing that pendulum. It's definitely thinner than some of the books we've been reading recently. So you guys will probably rack this one off in a day or two. But it is. I'm curious to check it out, especially for this one that I had passed by and for whatever reason didn't check off my list as a kid.
I think it's a great pick. I've read this book, and I read this to my kids, actually. I cannot imagine why this book would be banned. I can't think of anything about it, but it was super. I'm looking forward to reading it again. Thanks for that one.
Yeah, I read this to my kid when she was very young, and enjoyed it as an adult. It had passed me by until I was like well into my 30s.
Yeah, I read this book probably 20 years ago. I remember reading it in one night. I just kind of got hooked. However, my opinion of it has changed in the last little while, and maybe I will rewatch. I think there's 2 or 3 versions of this. There's a newer movie which was with Oprah Winfrey that I don't think is that great, but there was a made-for-TV version of this in the 90s, which I think is kind of sweet. But yeah, I do look forward to talking about this. Cool.
Neat. Yeah, very good.
Thank you for joining us today. Are you an Alastair Reynolds fan? Do you read his books? Let us know, and go check out the website, talesfromthebridge.com. It's going to be going through some changes over the next little bit as we get it going, but we would love it if you checked it out. Thank you for joining us again. Until next time.